Okay, enough reminiscing. Time to talk about bugs. In 2007, just 2 years after launch, Agoda got acquired by Priceline. Asia had its first real online travel exit, and suddenly, the world was paying attention. Was this the first turning point for online travel in Asia? Rob Rosenstein, co-founder of Agoda, has a different take on it.
Oh, God, no. Oh, God, no. No, not at all. That acquisition, was at a time where there was a much bigger thing going on, which was the global financial crisis. Because we were thinking, this is something I don't think I've ever talked about with anybody else, but we were thinking, well, I was thinking, why don't we roll up all these small companies into one big Asian player and see if we can sell it to one of the big American companies? I looked at all the other competitors in the space and they were all sort of in that same boat. Like maybe we should sell, maybe we should monetize, maybe we should, partner. And so there's a lot of activity on the deal space at the very early stages, because in those days, we really, in Asia, many of us didn't think we had a chance to survive in the, shadow of these giant, what appeared in those days, it's sort of ironic, like these giant American players, Orbitz, Travelocity, Expedia, and maybe Priceline. And so it just shows you how fast things changed.
In India, things had taken off. In 2010, MakeMyTrip went public. Asia's travel tech wasn't on the sidelines anymore, it was on the scoreboard.
The hotel and package market took longer. So even at IPO time, we were still about 78% actually flights and just about 22% hotel and accommodation and packages. But when they called up their travel agent and they said, hey, I want to book that rupees 999 fare from Delhi to Bombay, the travel agent very often didn't want to sell it. So the travel agent told the customer over the phone, oh, that's not available. Why don't you buy this? They wanted to sell full service carriers because they made more money there, but also because for booking a ticket on a low cost carrier, the travel agent went out of pocket. And if the customer changed their mind, then the travel agent was in a jam because you may not get the money from the customer, but you had to make it good to the airline. So I think online travel solved that in a beautiful way because we built on the APIs that the airlines had. We had real-time connectivity. So it was the customer who dropped their credit card when they liked something. Fundamentally, the paradigm changed from the travel agent being in control to the customer being in control. And that was a heady feeling. And I think that really got us off, as a business model.
In 2011, and just 6 years after its founding, Qunar sold to Baidu for $306 million. I still recall Fritz Demopoulos stepping out and taking the call when we were at WIT Australia in Sydney that year. He returned with a big grin on his face. It was time for the third Asian dragon to rise, Indonesia, population 277 million, fifth largest domestic travel market in the world. Enter Traveloka 2012, started by 3 software engineers, Ferry Unadi, Albert, and Derianto Kusuma. They wanted to make travel easy for Indonesians. But it wasn't easy. They were ahead of their time. Digital infrastructure, not there. Industry, not ready. They were seen as a bunch of kids. Cesar Indra, now president, joined soon after and recalls the early days.
We started 13 years ago, and I joined shortly after. When we started, we had a simple question, right? How do we make travel more accessible? How do we make the world accessible to Indonesians? And it's such a simple question, but very hard to answer. Me personally, I was very excited, coming out of a small town, being able to work on a solution together with the group to solve real problem that's faced by average Indonesians and actually made real positive contribution to an imperfect place like Indonesia. The first problem that we had to solve was around payment. So we had to build a hardware to scale bank transfer because at the time, typical transaction was done via manual bank-to-bank transfer. So that's the first thing we solved. We built a hardware really to scale bank-to-bank transfer. The airline infrastructure also wasn't ready because majority of their booking was offline. It took a lot of my time to share this vision, to make them understand, to paint a picture of the future. If you don't invest in this, you won't be able to compete also with the rest of the players. So it's really about convincing and educating them that it's important to build the infrastructure for them. I think a lot of airlines view us as, just saw us as these new kids on the block that create nuisance for them. So for us, it's very hard to get through the door to get to the right decision makers and even get a meeting with the right person. So we really had to work very hard and take our time to be able to get that recognition.
And did you know? Traveloka actually started as a meta search.
Yeah, the reason we switched from Meta to Booking, I think there are a few reasons. The first one, when Indonesians book through us as a Meta, even though we directed to our partner, but they still call us if there's problem with the ticket. So we are still serving. So we weren't really Meta. The business model was a bit too early to start at the time. So there's this whole lot of backend infrastructures that wasn't ready to handle all this online travel demand, where we really had to play a role in really shaping one by one.
Turned out to be the best decision they ever made. Traveloka became a trailblazer in fundraising, and by 2017, it had achieved unicorn status, a valuation exceeding $1 billion. There was no looking back for this bunch of kids from small towns with big dreams to change travel. To Agoda's Rob Rosenstein, Traveloka represents the second wave of online travel that was largely shaped by capital flow from west to east, and it helped fuel the rise of local giants in China, India, and Indonesia.
As we came out of the global financial crisis, there was QE, quantitative easing. So the US government and Fed released so much capital into the markets, and so did other banks around the world, that it flooded the market with capital. And that financed a wave of homegrown, highly localized companies in APAC. The ebb and flow of the macro changed the character of the market, and that was the big turning point. That was largely a function of QE, of quantitative easing. The fact that capital is really one of the big disruptors in these industries. Not just, we tend to look at technology as the disruptor, but capital is a major disruptor. When I went to raise money in 2005-06, people were looked at me like, wait a minute, so you're not profitable and you're in Asia, and aren't all those Asian companies just going to be owned by Expedia and Priceline and Orbitz and Travelocity? Nobody wanted to put, real money into the business. Fast forward 8 years later, if you were in Indonesia, say we're going to be really big in Indonesia, suddenly you could raise 100 million. Right? Not, or billion, right? So I think the power, the notion that these big local markets is really a notion of the interest, the QE interest in capital flowing into these big markets. And that's what made this work.
Whatever made it work, it seemed you could do no wrong in this second wave of online travel. Well-funded players such as Traveloka were chasing growth, not profitability. It was scale at all costs. The market was ripe for e-commerce and online travel. Low-cost airlines made air travel accessible to everyone and pushed travelers online with their best prices. A young population went social and mobile. It fired up the market and transformed it fundamentally from browsers to mobile. Then in 2016, Ctrip made two moves. In January, it invested in MakeMyTrip, a stake it increased 3 years later. The Chindia effect was coming into play. And in November 2016, it acquired Skyscanner in a deal which valued the Edinburgh-based company at about £1.4 billion. For the founders of Skyscanner, Gareth and his two co-founders, Barry Smith and Bonham Grimes, who had started the business to solve their personal problems of finding cheap flights to ski resorts, it was a beautiful exit. The pendulum had swung. Asia was untethering itself from Western models and going its own way. A new decade, 2020 and beyond, was coming. Remember 2009? Online travel share in APAC was at 17.4%. Well, in 2025, it stands at 65.4% of a total travel market value of $491 billion. The Asian century was getting into full swing until